Good evening, everybody. Hello. I'm Mark Katchis, the editor of the Tampa Bay Times, and I'm pleased to welcome you to tonight's Spotlight Tampa Bay event presented by AdventHealth. We created Spotlight 2.5 years ago as a means to engage with you, our audience, in a participatory style. So we're so glad to have you here with us. We convene thought leaders, experts, and stakeholders to confront some of the really big issues that are facing our community, our region, our state, or the whole country. And tonight we have a big one, colon cancer. It's a big, big topic. It's an insidious form of cancer that is on the rise, and it is affecting and killing more people under the age of 50 than any other cancer in the United States. It's also a cancer that hits home for us. Just a few years ago, one of our top editors at the Tampa Bay Times 3 years ago was diagnosed with colon cancer, and she detailed and chronicled her journey in the pages of the Tampa Bay Times. Fortunately, she is now cancer-free. Yes. But not everybody is so lucky. She was diagnosed at the age of 43, by the way. Yeah. And not everybody has been so lucky, clearly. So ask good questions, listen and learn. Make sure you ask questions. There's a great opportunity to do that here tonight. I want to thank our sponsors, AdventHealth, for making tonight possible. We really, really appreciate your commitment to community conversations and making events like this a possibility. So we're going to get into this in a minute here. We've got a terrific panel for you. But first I want to introduce a brief video that AdventHealth produced tonight, especially for this event. So let's go ahead and roll that. And again, thank you for being here.
I am Arlene McNeely, and I am cancer-free. Finally, I'm able to wear my boots again. I'm so happy. That is who I am, is my Western boots.
When I first saw Arlene, she came in for an infection in her perianal region. Subsequently, on examination, was diagnosed with an anal cancer that was confirmed after a colonoscopy was performed with additional polyps removed and biopsies.
And then they're telling me I have cancer.
Mentally, she was pretty distraught. Right? She's been a healthy lady throughout her life. And oftentimes that's how we meet patients. They've been healthy throughout their life and suddenly, they get a diagnosis of cancer. And I do believe in, AdventHealth's motto that we take care not only of the body, but the mind and the spirit. And at that point, yes, she had a diagnosis of, that was pretty traumatic for her, but 80% plus individuals with her diagnosis can be cured. And at that point, she just needed a mental and also spiritual boost.
She did pray for me because she asked me, what else can I do for you? And I said, you could pray for me. So she was standing at the end of the bed and she put her hands like on my feet and she prayed, over me. But I think she was concerned because the way I looked, that maybe I wasn't quite sure about doing the treatments at that time. I wasn't sure I had it in me, the fight.
We were able to do her procedures minimally invasively. She was able to heal very quickly. We were able to have all the specialties available at AdventHealth Tampa in order to be able to treat and cure Arlene's cancer. From surgery to radiation oncology to radiation to pathology or radiology, even the ostomy nurse and specialty nurses on our floor.
From the first moment I met Dr. Wynn, kind and loving and encouraging. And I got that every visit. I'm very grateful, Dr. Wynn, and I love you, Dr. Wynn, more than words. So it's from the bottom of my heart that I say how much I love you, Dr. Wynn, respect you, highly respect you, and I thank God for you.
At this point, she's cancer-free. She's cured.
Good evening. We all love stories like that, right? I'm Dr. Raj Vadhavan. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer for AdventHealth West Florida Division. And I want to thank you all for coming here today, because one thing is clear, that you all care about colon cancer. That's why you're here, because you want to learn more about it, you want to have a discussion around it. I'm sure you've all heard that it is very important to get screened for colon cancer at the right time, especially if you're over 45. You're going to hear it again many times today. And I also know that I'm standing between an exceptional panel here and you. But before we go to the panel, I do want to talk about a few things. I want to tell you a story. You know, we all have best intentions for self-care, but generally, life and work can get in the way. So the story I'm going to tell you about a physician leader in our organization. A couple of years ago, he was just over 50. He had no family history of colon cancer. Healthy, he thought he ate well, good diet, exercise regularly, never thought that colon cancer could affect him. And just like many of us, he had delayed his screening because of busyness. Typically, that's what happens. He was talking to a GI gastroenterologist friend of his who convinced him that even though there are no risk factors, you know the history, you know the story, you know how common it is, and you need to get screened. So a screening colonoscopy is arranged. This physician leader calls the gastroenterologist friend of his 2 days before the colonoscopy saying, "There's no way I can do this. I have too many things on my plate. I cannot take a day off work." So this gastroenterologist friend of his says, "I'm going to put you on as a first case in the morning, just like Dr. Parkin does many times for many of our patients. I'm going to get you out of there. You can go back to the office. Just don't tell anybody you had anesthesia and do not make any impactful decisions." Not a great thing to tell, but you know, as doctors, we are the worst patients, right? So the physician leader goes in there, has the quick procedure done, wakes up from anesthesia. His friend is sitting next to him with a grim face, and he holds up a picture of the colonoscopy screening, and it shows a polyp, which, if you're a physician, you know what polyps, normal polyp-looking polyps are and what cancerous polyps are. Even just you can suspect based on just looking at the picture. And it was clear that this was obvious colon cancer. So he turns this physician leader's world upside down, and the questions that go through his mind is, what would it mean for him, for his family? Could this cancer be fully resected? What would be the long-term outcome? There are so many unanswered questions and possibilities of things going wrong. And this physician leader wished that he had had this screening earlier, but you can't turn time. I seem to know a lot about this physician leader because that's me. I happen to be that physician leader who was at that end, who had ignored self-care because of all the other things that get in the way. Thankfully, my story, as far as I know so far, has a good ending. Thank you. It was early enough that the cancer could be fully removed with surgery. I'm also lucky that we didn't find any spread for cancer. But if I had delayed it further, the outcome could have been very different. Because we know that stage 4 cancer has only a 15% survival rate at 5 years. And if you get it caught at stage 1, there's a 92% survival rate. So most people can be cured if it's caught early. So if I had been screened in a timely fashion, I might have saved myself surgery and my wife and daughter a pretty big scare. Right? Colonoscopies are good at picking up polyps, sometimes even in a precancerous stage, and if removed, they will never progress to cancer. So it is good that I didn't wait longer, but I should have gone sooner. So today's panel of experts includes a gastroenterologist from our system, a colorectal surgeon, a dietitian, a Health Equity Foundation president, and a colon cancer survivor. They will answer your questions and share what we know about colon cancer and discuss everything from risk factors to details that you would want to know about. But I'm going to leave you with 3 things I hope you remember. Number 1, colon cancer is on the rise, and nobody knows if and when you may be affected. I never thought that could happen to me, ever, but told you the story. Number 2, screening is the only way to detect colon cancer early. And number 3, hearing this will not save your life. You have to do something about it. So thank you. And I'm going to ask Justine to introduce our panel.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Justine Griffin. I'm the Economy and Health Editor at the Tampa Bay Times, and I'm delighted to be here with you tonight with this very engaging panel we have that I'm going to introduce you to in just a moment. But before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping notes. Tonight's program is being recorded. It will be available to see online at our Tampa Bay Times Spotlight website. You will get an email after this program has ended, where you will get a link to that recording. Tonight, we're also hoping to spend some time to take some questions from you, our audience. A few folks from the Times will be walking around tonight as we're speaking, collecting cards. Hopefully, you picked up some cards and a pen. And if you have a question that you would like to submit for us to ask our panelists later tonight, just please raise it in the air and someone from the Times will come around and get that for you. And this is the first spotlight event in our Wellness Rewind series that we are doing with our partner at AdventHealth. You'll also find more information about our upcoming spotlight events on our website, which I'll share some more at the end of our programming. But why don't we get started here in just a moment? I want to allow our panelists to introduce themselves. We'll start here with you.
Hi. Hi, I'm Sabrina Prabhakaran. I'm one of the gastroenterologists at Advent Tampa. I'm very happy to be here to talk to you guys about colon cancer screening and kind of address any concerns or questions you may have.
I'm Sheldon Quarles, played for the Buccaneers for 10 years, and I've been in front office for 19 years. So happy to be here, and I am a colon cancer survivor.
Hi, I'm Wendy Wesley. I'm a registered and licensed dietitian and nutritionist, and I talk about fiber all day long. And so I think that's what I'm going to talk about today, food, and how food can have an impact on our prevention of colon cancer.
Good evening. I'm Kanika Tomlin. I'm the president and CEO of the Foundation for a Healthy St. Petersburg. We work to create a community where good health can allow all people to thrive, and we do that through a focus on health equity. So excited to see our previous CEO, Carl Lavender, here, who started so many of the programs. We're fortunate to continue, and very excited to talk to you about health equity and the role it can play in our work against colon cancer.
I'm Dr. Kim Nguyen. I'm one of the colorectal surgeons. I guess one of my goals here tonight is kind of counterintuitive and that to my job security, but it's so that you don't see me, so hopefully. So you'll learn all the preventative factors to take home to your family, and hopefully you don't have to see me other than on the streets. Thank you.
So we're here tonight to talk about colon cancer. And as a health editor at the Times, colon cancer is something that we've seen popping up in headlines in recent years. As Mark mentioned in his opening remarks, we had a colleague, Ellen Clark, who dealt with her own colon cancer diagnosis and detailed her journey in the Tampa Bay Times. I remember that vividly because as someone who is a millennial, I remember just being struck that a colleague who was in her early 40s was dealing with something like that. And it was the first time I really thought about my own health and screenings and why this is so important. Since then, we've seen so many celebrity deaths. Folks of all age ranges can be affected by colon cancer. Research in recent years has linked alcohol consumption, ultra-processed foods, and more to colon cancer diagnoses, and we're going to dig into all of that tonight. So my first question is for you, Dr. Nguyen. Dr. Nguyen, who is the surgeon you just saw in that really touching video. Knowing that we're seeing cases on the rise, and especially in folks under the age of 50, I'm wondering if you could give us a quick synopsis of why you think this is happening.
So we've known about risk factors for a long time, about a few that you've talked about. Obesity is number one cause that they see linked to early onset colorectal cancer, which are those less than 50. So they've shown that individuals with BMI greater than 30, you have like an 88% increased risk. If you're overweight, you have 32% increased risk. And so they've also linked it into your childhood as well. So when you have childhood obesity, adolescent obesity, and even maternal obesity when women are pregnant has been linked to increased risk. And you've already talked about, drinking, alcohol consumption. If you drink greater than 14 drinks per week, that has been linked to increased risk of colorectal cancer, around 41 to 71%. Smoking, we've already known for a long time, increases average risk to 44%. Then sedentary lifestyle. They've shown that if you sit around for 14 hours, greater than 14 hours per week doing nothing, that can increase your risk to around 69%. And then, of course, we talked about the foods, right, that we eat. So we talked about the processed meats, sausages, things like that, hot dogs, great things full of salt, fat, and nitrates and stuff. Refined grains that you'll talk about. I won't talk much more about that. High dietary fat and such. So those have all been linked. There've been inflammatory bowel disease, but that's only a certain percentage, like 3% of early onset colorectal cancer. More research is being done right now. They're looking at the microbiome, which is the gut flora. They've looked at certain bacteria that have toxins that release DNA damaging toxins that have been found in higher concentrations in those who have colorectal cancer at age 40 and less. And so there are a lot of research going out there, but those are some of the modifiable risk factors that we can, focus on.
Gotcha. Dr. Prakaban, could you, in your own practice and seeing patients, knowing that we're seeing this increase risk, especially in young people, is that changing the way that you are talking to patients about screenings or even determining someone's own risk?
Absolutely. I would say that, colon cancer screening guidelines used to say we would start screening at age 50, right? And in the last 6-7 years, we changed that to being at age 45, and I think that will probably change in the future more so. But I think colon cancer screening, colonoscopies, it's something that's a little embarrassing for patients to sometimes talk about. People feel uncomfortable to talk about it and uncomfortable at the idea of having a colonoscopy, right? Whether it be the prep for the day before or the actual physical procedure itself, there's a lot of uncertainty, fear, and embarrassment, right, around it, which, and the symptoms that come with it too. So people who have symptoms like rectal bleeding, changes in their bowel habits, things that should warrant a colonoscopy, people don't always. It's not something you talk about at the dinner table, right? You may say, oh, I've been having, this rash, but you're not going to necessarily talk about your bowel habits. So I think that when patients come in, it's very important for us as gastroenterologists to really discuss those symptoms and also discuss screening. I think we're pushing more of that conversation when patients are unsure if they want to have a colonoscopy, really talking about why. What are your concerns? What are your fears? What are the things that are holding you back, and how can we address those to help you get some form of screening, whatever it may be. And I think, my biggest thing I tell patients is, you see advertisements, there's one on 275, I think Advent has actually, that's, about lung cancer, and it's early screening allows for early detection, and it can, change your outcome. With colon cancer, it's not just early detection of cancer, it's prevention of cancer, and I think that is so important. It's one of the few screening modalities that we have for cancer where you can find something and remove it and you never have to develop cancer, right? So if you get your screenings on time, you get them done appropriately, and hopefully, before symptoms, we can really identify polyps, remove them then and there, and prevent you from ever having to worry about cancer.
Sure. So Wendy, we've mentioned some of the issues that link to higher risk, right? Obesity, increased alcohol consumption, ultra-processed foods. I mean, does this surprise you as someone who works with what we eat, what we put in our bodies? Are you surprised by this result?
I'm not surprised at all. I see more and more ultra-processed foods in my patients' intake diaries today than I did 5 or 10 years ago. The minimum requirement for women for fiber per day is 25 grams, and the minimum requirement for men per day for fiber is 30 grams, and my patients are coming in at half of the minimum. So I'm seeing, I primarily work with women, and they are routinely clocking in at 8 to 10 grams a day. So then we look at what they are eating, and it's a very, very high diet of ultra-processed foods, which are refined grains, high added sugars, very high sodium, and almost no fiber. So I talk to my patients about their bowel habits. Some are reluctant, but I push. When I worked at the hospital in the dietitian's room, we talked about poop all day long. What goes in and what comes out, and that's a very important part of nutrition, is talking about bowel habits and finding ways to eat more nutrient-dense foods, getting away from factory foods and back to farm foods. And I don't mean organic, and I don't mean expensive. I push fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans, legumes, whole grains. I'm not vegan or vegetarian myself, but I am plant majority, and I do push plants for their fiber and their micronutrients.
Dr. Nguyen, any cancer diagnosis is scary, but with colorectal cancers, there seems to be a high number of them that are very aggressive and fast-moving. Is that true?
No.
Okay.
And so we've known about the growth of normal colon to precancerous lesions called adenomas, and then cancer. And usually it takes on average around 10 years in order for abnormal cell to become cancer. That's why we have the surveillance screening as we do. If you undergo the screening at age 45 and they don't see anything, you don't get another screening until 10 years later. So it takes a long time during that time to even have a normal cell grow to an abnormal cell. So yes, there are certain conditions like, certain polyps like C-cell serrated polyps, or those who have hereditary cancers, germline mutations, but those still take years. And so we have altered screening plans for individuals with those. So it takes many years to get to the point. And even if you develop cancer, they've shown that it takes about, on average, 1.6 to around 4 years before you develop symptoms. So it takes many years before a normal cell becomes cancer.
Shelton, I was wondering if you could take us back to where you were when you were first diagnosed with colon cancer.
So it's somewhat remarkable that we even found it. We had a new trainer, because I was still with the Buccaneers organization. We had a new trainer or a new doctor that came in, and people are somewhat territorial when it comes to who sees them, who treats them, that sort of thing. But me, on the other hand, I'm willing to give everybody a shot at being friendly. And so I went to see him for a physical, and he asked me a series of questions, and then and over the course of the questions, one of the things I said, every now and then I have blood on my stool, and he was like, all right. So he asked me more questions, and then at the very end, he said, well, would you be willing to take a colonoscopy? I'm like, well, you're a doctor. If you need me to take one, then I'm taking it. I'd rather be proactive than reactive. So we did that, and the doctor that I saw, she said that everything would be fine. You're way too young. You're in your mid-30s. There's no way that you have colon cancer. So she said, I saw 3 polyps, I inked them, and everything should be fine. And so she called me back 2 days later and said that that those spots came back positive for cancer, and that I needed to get in that Monday. And she said it was one of the most aggressive. She does 4,000 to 5,000 colonoscopies a year. And she said one of mine she hadn't seen in 3 or 4 years, and it was one of the most aggressive forms. And so I need to get in right away. So fortunately, even though I was in my mid-30s, they were able to cauterize, and then I did colonoscopies every 6 months for 3 years, and then so I'm cancer-free.
That was my next question. How are you now?
It's weird because, like, as a youngster, like me and my, not to gross anybody out, my bowel movements back then, like I was like, like every 2 or 3 days, and I'm like seeing people on the toilet every day, like it's like when you get to the office, like they're on the toilet. I'm like, wait, what? But like me, I was like every 3 days. So I don't know if that had a part to play in how my system functioned, or if that is the way I was. But just definitely fortunate to have caught it as early as I did, and I'm here with you today, because if we wouldn't have caught it, I wouldn't be here.
Dr. Parakaban, there's nothing fun that takes place during a colonoscopy. I think there's a lot of fear around getting that kind of screening. Just knowing there's there's a mystery to it almost. But can you just share what you think patients need to know about the process and why it's not as scary as we all think it might be?
Sure. I think to kind of go into that, you have to talk about the day before, right? Everyone's heard like some sort of horror story from a parent, friend, someone about the prep, right? And ultimately, what it is the day before your procedure, we need to adequately see your colon. And if there is stool in there, we're not going to be able to see the small polyps, which we want to find, because I always tell my patients, I want to get them when they're babies. I don't want to get them as a teenager, right? I want to get those polyps out early. So we want a good visualization. So that means the day before you're doing clear liquids, soups, jello, broth, and then that night you drink a liquid formulation of some sort. Every doctor has their preference of what they might do to help kind of flush out your system. The next day you come in, you'll talk to the anesthesiologist, so you get sedation, right? It's not surgery, but it is sedation enough where you're asleep, you don't feel anything, you don't remember anything, and most people say it's the best nap of their life. So you come in, you get the procedure. The procedure can vary depending on what is found and, different anatomical variations in your colon, but typically could be from 15 minutes to 25 minutes, depending. Like I said, you're asleep. We do take a long, flexible tube with a light and a camera, and we're just evaluating your colon. And what we're looking for is any abnormal growth. Those are polyps, and if we see them, we'll biopsy them or essentially cut them out. And I think that's one of the things that makes colonoscopies very different than other screening modalities, because we can actually remove something if we find something, right?
Now, there are other types of screenings available. I'm sure I'm not the only person who's seen a Cologuard commercial in recent years. Is that something that's worth trying?
So there are certain patients within certain, who have no risk factors who may be candidates for Cologuard, right? It's something that you would definitely want to talk about with your doctor. The gold standard still is, and I think will always be, colonoscopy, direct visualization, and we can actually do something at the time. But in low risk or average risk individuals, I should say, who are asymptomatic and don't have certain medical comorbidities or family history, there are options of other tests, such as the Cologuard. It's a very personalized conversation, though, that I would recommend you have with your doctor. And the one thing I always caveat that with is, if you do have a positive Cologuard, you still need a colonoscopy. And sometimes patients end up doing a Cologuard, you get a positive result, and now you have to get your colonoscopy scheduled. And when patients come in, they're very anxious, right? They're like, I had this positive test. Does it mean that I have cancer? And it doesn't necessarily. It might just mean that you have a polyp. But I can say probably 99% of times when a patient comes in with a positive Cologuard, they just tell me, I wish I would have just done the colonoscopy, because the stress between that positive test and now is a lot.
So Dr. Nguyen, we mentioned that the current age recommendation for screening is 45. Do you anticipate that that age recommendation is going to go down based on the number of cases we're seeing in younger people?
The answer is yes. Currently, early onset colorectal cancer, less than 40, those who are 50 or who are diagnosed with colorectal cancer, it makes up 14% of the total cases of colorectal cancer in the US. And since the 1980s that they've been looking at, each year annually, it has been increasing by 2%. Because of these numbers, papers that have been coming out in the 2020s, the age range between 20 to 49, the leading colorectal cancer is now the leading cause of cancer deaths in men, and also the second leading cause of cancer deaths in women. So they anticipate, like in 2030, which is only like 4 years from now, 1 in 10 colon cancers and 1 in 4 rectal cancers will be in individuals less than 50 years old. So I anticipate that the age screening should be less, because we're seeing younger and younger patients getting this in a greater amount.
Gotcha. So Dr. Tomlin, as we have this conversation, I'm thinking about myself, my own family, our access to healthcare. I need to look up an AdventHealth doctor to go and see for my own screening. But not everybody in the community has access to healthcare like I do, which I'm lucky to have insurance, right, through my employer. I was wondering if you could talk to us more about those barriers, those social and societal barriers that make it hard for some people in Tampa Bay and across the country to have a relationship with healthcare that is healthy, that allows people to be proactive in this way.
It's a very important question, Justine. So much of what we've talked about tonight manifest on an individual level with our individual choices. And you're asking a population health question that really gets at our community's collective health. And it's as important for our community as we strive to be a community where health creates an environment where we all can thrive, that we not only have individual command, but also some sense of our community's trajectory toward health. And there is a widening gap, no question, not only as it relates to access to care, but also as it relates to outcomes. We are seeing pervasive and persistent disparities across the nation and certainly in our community. The highest rates of colorectal cancer are in the Black community. In the United States, a Black person is 20% more likely to have colorectal cancer than our white counterparts, and 40% more likely to die. This is a disparity that is systemic and requires a systemic solution. Systemic problems require systemic solutions that look at the conditions that lead to these results. So we've heard a lot about prevention. We've heard a lot about the important role of a proactive approach in staving off colorectal cancer. So when we're looking at a systemic solution and we're seeing a concentration in one population where those types of things aren't happening, we have to ask ourselves why. And the answers unfold very plainly in just the differences in the way that we move through very common practices in our day as it relates to health. We have very different realities within our community among people. So as it relates to proactive health care, some people have the latitude and the luxury to think very critically, very proactively about their care, and then they have the resources to do something with the information that they find out. Other people, as we know, who are living in the survival level of Maslow's hierarchy, are trying to survive, and they're dealing with their health care from an acute standpoint. They deal with health care once they're sick, and they're looking to get better, as opposed to health care when you're well and remaining healthy. We heard an example of someone who might have a constraint of taking off from work. For some people, their employment encourages them to take care of their health. Paid time off to go to a medical appointment is a common reality. For other people, taking time off from work to get medical care could only happen in an acute case where it was causing an absence from work. The idea of a preventative appointment that is not acute is really out of many people's reach. And then a very critical component that we look at as we work on health equity has to deal with trust between communities of color and the medical community. And this is something that is historic and has existed for many years. We often think that it's something that is ancient history, but there are a recent Pew study showed that 50% of Black Americans report a negative experience with their medical providers. We're so fortunate in our community. We have a medical community that is committed to ensuring that we have positive relationships with our physicians. This is not to castigate the medical community or to lay the feet of patients of personal responsibility, but to really underscore that this is a systemic issue that requires a systemic approach and must include partnership across all the stakeholders who can play a part in crafting solutions.
All right, and just a reminder, if you have questions that you would like for us to ask up here on stage, please keep an eye out for our folks from the Times who are collecting those questions. Shelton, I wonder if there's something you could share with us about your treatment or about your own personal risk of colon cancer that surprised you.
Just, I would say from just the prep, like the doctor said, that it's awful. The day prior, and then, just feeling like I needed to have a diaper on the night before. But regardless of that process, it's very important to make sure that you get screened for colon cancer. I mean, it's doing a colonoscopy. Being here versus not being here is very important. And so, so anything that you can do to help you get to a point where you know that you don't have colon cancer by doing the prep work and doing like I didn't want to do it, but like looking back on it, like what if I hadn't done it? I wouldn't be here today. So I encourage everyone to take your health. And it's very important that that you do everything you can to be here for as long as you can.
It feels like a small price to pay, right, when the stakes are this high.
Yeah.
Dr. Tomlin, I'm hoping we could talk more about the social determinants of health that I know you explained so eloquently in the work that you do with the Foundation for a Healthy St. Pete. Often in medical research, we're able to identify groups of people or regions within a community where health risks are just and access is just harder to come by. Even in our discussions before we came out on stage, we were just talking about even access to healthy foods can be so hard to come by for certain groups of people. So can you define those social determinants and what they mean in the bigger picture?
For sure, and the bigger picture is the place to start when we think about healthcare in our nation. So in 2024, as a nation, we spent $5.3 trillion on healthcare. That's more than any other nation as measured per capita and as measured in absolute dollars. But we are far from having the best outcomes for that investment. And we look at, why is that? If we are spending so much money, why don't our outcomes reflect that? Well, it has to do with this construct of social determinants of health. And, that's like a lot of words strung together that sounds a little bit foreign, but what it really is about is the environment and the conditions that shape our daily lives. And it has everything to do with our healthcare outcomes. So if we look at how we spend that $5.3 trillion, what we'll quickly find is while we call our healthcare continuum a healthcare system, we actually pretty much have a sick care system. Most people engage and interact with the healthcare continuum at the point of being ill. Most people in our nation. And most of that money is spent on getting sick people well. The social determinants of health are all about what leads up to that and determines whether a person is healthy and thriving with well-being or suffering persistent stressors that eat away at their resilience in a way that recovering from illness makes it very hard. So when we talk about these determinants, they're things like your neighborhood and built environment. They're environmental factors. Where does a person live? What is their perceived safety in their neighborhood and in their home? What is the access to quality education, access to quality health care? What is the picture of their economic stability? Are they making a living wage? Do they have social and community context? Are they connected to themselves or to their family and to the broader community? These determinants have everything to do with the health outcomes we face individually and the health outcomes we are seeing as a community. So at my foundation and others throughout our sector who work toward this in partnership with the medical community and everyone who touches the continuum of care, we understand that one of the greatest things we can do is invest in the front end of people's lives and ensure that they are thriving in those determinants. And that is how we'll see sustained better outcomes on the back end.
Wendy, I'm hoping you could share some advice for people who have or who want to make a substantial change in their diets. It can be easier said than done, right?
I try and make it easy. I do. Most people come to me, patients come to me at the initial consultation, and their concern is for protein. They're afraid they're not getting enough protein, and I like to flip that script very, very quickly and take a look at their dietary intake. And mostly, like I said earlier, is what we find is that they're very, very deficient on fiber. And so then I talk about bulking. How can we bulk foods that are familiar to you with some high fiber add-ins? I'm not a good dietitian if I throw a bunch of new food at you, or a bunch of new recipes or new kinds of things that may not fit with you culturally. So we find out, what are you already eating, and how can we bulk what you're eating? How can we add to? And so my philosophy is I like to add to and not take away. I think that the vision of the dietitian is that she comes into your house with the big trash bag and she takes away all of your food, your favorite food. I like to add to. So if we're making eggs, maybe we could add some peppers and onions to the eggs. If we're making spaghetti sauce, maybe we add some tomatoes and mushrooms to the spaghetti sauce. My favorite is by deli chicken salad from the grocery store. It's very, very high in mayonnaise, but when we bulk it up with chopped apples, maybe some walnuts, maybe some chopped grapes, some onions, then we increase the fiber, we increase the nutrient density, and we decrease the sodium. So when we bulk with fiber, I have noticed that all the nutrition balances. Sodium goes down, fiber goes up, nutrient density goes up. Another thing that happens is satiety goes up. We go around in this wonderful state called full. Nobody likes to go around hungry. We like to feel full. No one likes to be peckish. And so fiber is the key. I haven't even talked about cholesterol. High fiber can lower cholesterol, which helps us with heart disease. So protein is on its way out. Fiber is the next big wave in nutrition. And the question I get all the time is, can't I just take Metamucil? No. Metamucil, a supplement, is not the answer to nutrition. And so when I say add to, sometimes the intervention is, can we add one piece of fruit to your intake today? One piece of fruit. Can we add one handful of nuts? Can we add one serving of vegetables? Can we add a half cup of beans to your taco meat? And that's how we get there.
To follow up on that, Wendy, we were talking about ultra-processed foods backstage too, and just how it's everywhere, it's in everything, in white flour and white rice. So do you have any advice for us when we're at the grocery store, we're in our Publix, and we want to go for that frozen pizza with the frozen pepperoni on it? What is a healthy alternative, or what should we be looking for in the list of ingredients to make sure we're trying to cut down on ultra-processed foods?
Sure. I have a quick 3-step test to identify an ultra-processed food. 1, it comes in a package. Number 2, it contains one ingredient on the list that you can't go to Publix and pick up off the shelf right this minute, like mono and diglycerides. You can't go to Publix and say to the kid, hey, take me to the shelf where I can pick up some mono and diglycerides. So that's number 2. It contains one ingredient you can't pull off the shelf at Publix. And 3, it often has a health claim on the front of the package. I tell my patients, ignore everything that they tell you or they claim on the front of the package. They can say just about anything. And let's flip it over. We practice flipping over and look at nutrition facts. Look at fiber, look at sodium, and most important, serving size. How much of this food is the food manufacturer talking about? All of the numbers, as many of you probably know, all of the numbers on the nutrition facts label pertain to the serving size. So comes in a package, ingredients you can't buy at Publix, and number 3, has a health claim. The Broccoli Council doesn't have a marketing budget.
Good advice. Dr. Tomlin, what can we do as a community to ensure more people feel like they have access to care and are being heard by the medical professionals who are treating them?
We're doing it. This is a great example of what we can do, and thank you to AdventHealth for bringing this important conversation to the community. Thank you to the Tampa Bay Times. We have to acknowledge that this is a reality that we are facing as a community and as a nation, and we have to get very smart about it and then be empowered. If we're just talking to just on a day-to-day basis. Some of what we've heard might sound daunting, or it might not be an easy reality for everybody to add in new ingredients. But there is so much hope and so much opportunity for us to, there's a term, an African term of the Igbo people, it's called Sankofa, and it means go back and get it. And this really is a chance for our community to go back and get it, to return to some previous ways of before there was a Publix on every corner. Food deserts are a reality. A lack of access to food is a reality. But there was a time where there was less access than there is today, and people grew food. We have new urban farms. We have the 15th Street Farm with us here today that's doing amazing work. Absolutely. Urban agriculture is all around us, and it's a wonderful model for community cooperation. And we see wonderful examples. There are 6x6 stoops in Brooklyn, New York, where people grow all the vegetables they'll need in a week. So as we can be empowered. Agency is so important in our individual journeys and collective commitment to be a healthy community. We can be empowered about taking charge of these decisions that we are making, of understanding that our medical community are our partners and truly invested in here to help us. For making sure that as we move forward in our healthcare journeys, that we're looking around at others in our community and making sure that they are resourced and able to come along. And as we make those differences and look at the social determinants of health, I think that we'll see some different outcomes.
Okay. So Shelton, what do you hope others can learn or take away from your survivor story?
Just to be proactive instead of reactive. Screening is important. Be on the front end versus the back end, because you never know where it'll take you.
I think that's the theme of tonight, is being proactive. So we have our first batch of audience questions. Thank you all for taking the time to write these, and I'm actually very pleased to see that no one is afraid to write about their bowels. So thank you. We're here to take any gross question you have. All right. So the first question, I think this one would be great for you, Dr. Nguyen. What genetic testing is available for colon cancer?
So when we get colon cancer for genetic testing, there's next generation sequencing. Usually those are the type of genetic testing that we do. There's also immunohistochemical staining. So we only, unfortunately, if you don't have, you have to see a geneticist in order to have this done. And sometimes insurance don't cover for it. And the test can run around $250 to $500 to have these genetic testing done. There are certain genes that are notable in colon cancer, like the APC genes in the familial adenomatous polyposis syndrome or Lynch syndrome. But you have to keep in mind, a lot of the colon cancers, the early onset and the late onset, are sporadic. What does that mean? That means that you don't have a family history of it, you may not have a germline mutation of it, and it just occurs. It may be a mutation that we don't have a test for. So even if you have a negative genetic testing for it, doesn't mean you're not susceptible to developing colon cancer. Again, 70 to 80% of the majority of colon cancers there's no genetic link to that are known.
And I'm going to add to that because I've actually spoken to a couple companies recently that do genetic testing for some of my patients. If you have a personal history of colon cancer, they can get you genetic testing now, obviously. But if you also have had, say you're someone who's had 2 colonoscopies and on each one you had a significant number of polyps. If you have more than 10 polyps in your lifetime, whether it be 1 colonoscopy or over 3, you can get genetic testing now too. Also, if you have a family history, you can get genetic testing. So there's a few things now that we have, and they actually were working with us to show us what codes basically to use and what family history qualifies to get them screened and ideally covered by insurance. And what I found really interesting is that, say you've had a couple colonoscopies, you've had a good number of polyps, and you get genetic testing and you have a positive on the genetic testing, they'll screen all first-degree relatives it's covered. So they'll actually screen for family members as well. Or if you have a family member with a history of colon cancer and they got screened and were positive, you can get it. And it's important to also remember it's not just colon cancer, but sometimes there are certain syndromes where you have increased risk of, for example, ovarian cancer or breast cancer, where they put you also at increased risk for colon cancer. You can get screened as well. So there's some new testing there's some different test kits that are out. We just recently learned about some of these actually, and we'll see what happens with my patients who we just ordered on. I have 2 patients, and we'll see how the insurance process works. But it's definitely something to talk about because there are some options that are out there now.
That is a brilliant example of a systemic solution, a new practice or a new policy. Systemic issues require systemic solutions. So that type of genetic testing, that isn't a personal choice a person can make if the practice to make it available doesn't exist. The idea that it extends then to your family and other people who might be affected, or it looks for the predictive indicators that you might suffer this. Those are the types of systemic solutions that we need to put in place to really have a global impact on the types of medical issues that we are fighting.
Absolutely, and like Dr. Nguyen said, previously, really you had to go to a geneticist, and we used to send patients to Moffitt and try to get in with Tampa General, or wherever, they had a geneticist, and it would take months for patients to be seen. So now I do think that there are some options, and hopefully we can get more patients, the testing if they want, and if they qualify.
It's good to know.
Okay, we have another question for our doctors here. So we've talked a little bit about specific groups that might have higher risk for colorectal cancers. This question wants to know if there's a medical consensus on colon cancer risk for the gay or bi men community, and if that would change your advice for screenings.
HPV anal cancer, yes. So when you talk about anal cancer, which falls in a subgroup of, the GI cancers, those who are, that have human papillomavirus, it's similar to the human papillomavirus or cervical cancer. So in the homosexual community, there are greater incidences of developing anal cancer. So we do have screenings for that. If you are within the high-risk community, there are there are anal paps that primary cares do, or infectious disease does as well. And once, if there's abnormal cells from that, that's the type of screening, then they are sent to individuals such as myself, where we offer like high resolution anoscopy, where we'd go in further, do our procedures, staining cells with certain acids, highlighting abnormal cells, and they do screenings for anal cancer. But for colon and rectal cancer, no, they fall within the average risk family, unless they have family associations.
Okay. So this next one is, I think would be great for you, Wendy. We've talked a little about fiber. We've talked about ultra-processed foods. But what about probiotics? Is there any value to that? And, our physicians, feel free to weigh in as well.
If everything, with my patients, if everything seems to be going well, regular bowel movements, no GI problems, I do recommend probiotics if they would like them from foods, not from supplements. Our supplement industry is not regulated. And so I've had a couple of patients who are taking an over-the-counter probiotic, and they have alternating cases of constipation and diarrhea, and they can't get a handle. And I asked them, would you discontinue your over-the-counter probiotic for 7 to 10 days and see how it goes? Every patient I've asked to do that has had kind of come back to a regular daily bowel movement. No diarrhea, no constipation. Things have kind of leveled off. So I'm very suspicious of over-the-counter probiotics, but if you want to take probiotics that come in food, I think that's a fantastic practice. The most common and understood and ubiquitous probiotic out there is yogurt, but I have a lot of patients who enjoy kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha, pickles, green peas, green apples, sourdough bread.
So I agree. Probiotics, there's no harm to it. They've done a lot of research on it. Are there a lot of benefits? We don't really know. It's not established. However, there isn't a lot of harm. And when you talk to patients who go on probiotics, that they have GI gut issues, and if it helps them, then I said, continue to do so. We do give probiotics to individuals who are on antibiotics, just because the concept of, antibiotics, can do good, but also kind of do harm as well, because you kill off the good as well as the bad bacteria in your gut, and you can be predisposed to like C. diff infections and stuff like that. And hopefully that, if you can colonate the gut with good bacteria, which is what probiotics are, then hopefully that decreases the incidences of C. diff infections and stuff if you're on antibiotics. So it doesn't do harm, but and in some individuals it can benefit them. So.
If I could make a plug again for fiber, prebiotics, if you've heard of, we were talking about probiotics, prebiotics are fiber, and they are the things that the bacteria eat. So the healthiest diets and the healthiest colons are the ones where the person eats a wide variety of plants. Wide variety of plants, wide variety of prebiotics to feed a wide variety of bacteria.
Okay. This is for physicians, whoever wants to take this one. How infrequent can your bowel movements be before there's a cause for concern and you should get checked?
Everyone's different, right? So it kind of depends on how you've been your whole life, right? The normal is typically every other day to up to 2 to 3 times a day. That's what the definition of normal is. For some people, for different reasons, normal might be a little bit different, but if you're telling me in clinic that I have a bowel movement 1 time per week, we need to get more regular bowel movements. Fiber, that's probably your best thing, right? I'm gonna be telling you need to increase your fiber, things like that. It is a little bit individualized, but ideally I like my patients to be going at least every other day, if not every other day.
I agree with that.
Another question for our doctors. Some polyps are described as precancerous. What does that mean, and how dangerous are they?
So I'll kind of give you a little background on the different types of polyps, right? You can have adenomas. Adenomas are the polyps that we are looking for when we do a colonoscopy. Adenomas are the type that have the potential, if left in the colon, to become cancer, which is also called adenocarcinoma. You add a carcinoma, meaning cancer, at the end of it, right? So adenoma is the benign form of the cancer. There are other types of polyps that can grow in your colon. For example, some are called hyperplastic polyps. Those are benign and they do not have the potential to become cancer, right? When I do a colonoscopy, I often will remove most polyps that I see because you can't always tell the difference until it's under the microscope, right? But an adenoma a precancerous polyp, what it means by that is there's no cancer tissue at this point in time, but if left in the colon, if you didn't have that colonoscopy, if it wasn't removed, who's to say that 5-10 years from now that wouldn't become cancer? So a lot of people often, have a lot of worry after I tell them, we found 3 polyps, and they go, is it cancer? And, we as physicians, Dr. Wynn and I, when we see a polyp, we're able to tell you with pretty good certainty. If it's a small polyp, it's probably an adenoma. It's probably not cancer, right? I can tell you pretty confidently when it's small like that. But we always want to check it and be sure and get them out before they can grow.
Yes, agree.
All right, Wendy, another one for you. Years ago, many of us may remember this, but Cheerios had a big ad campaign touting that it was healthy, a healthy food that could lower cholesterol. Do you agree with that, or would it lower cholesterol? But is it considered refined grains?
Wow. The breakfast cereal aisle is probably, and the yogurt aisle are the two most confusing aisles in the grocery store. If there are 100 cereals on that aisle, I think I counted the other day, I found 5 that met. I came up with this thing called the 3-3 method, and it's per serving looking at foods that have higher than 3 grams of fiber and lower than 3 grams of added sugar. I gave a lot of grocery store tours, and I watched people look at the nutrition facts label, and one eye was going this way and one eye was going that way, and there was great levels of confusion. And I said, what if we could look at the nutrition facts label and just evaluate it on 2 pieces of data? And one is, where is the fiber? And number 2 is, where is the added sugar? And on the cereal aisle, there are 5 cereals that meet that criteria. So are Cheerios in that, of those 5, yes. Yellow box Cheerios are 4 grams of fiber per serving and 1 gram of added sugar per serving. So they meet my 3-3 method. But Honey Nut Cheerios don't, at 12 grams of added sugar and 1 gram of fiber. So my patients have told me that they really like this quick. It's a really, really quick and dirty way to take a look at the nutrition facts label and move through the grocery store with reduced fatigue. And whatever reduces fatigue in this vast, confusing world of food, I'm all for it.
Okay, got another one for you. What kind of foods are good options if you're eating out and don't feel like cooking?
I get this question a lot, and I used to have tips and tricks for dining out, and I finally decided that I'd like us all to, I love restaurants, let me just say that, but if we could figure out how to eat half of what a restaurant gives us. Restaurant portions they're ridiculous. And so I don't want to remove the joy and the pleasure of dining out, but what if we could go out and find a way to split entrees with our partners? Maybe we order one appetizer, we split an entree, and we walk out not feeling so full and heavier in the wallet. But take care of your servers. Take care of your servers as if you had 2 entrees, even though you just ordered 1. But that's my best advice as far as dining out, is figure out how to eat half of whatever a restaurant gives you.
Okay. All right, back to the doctor questions. At what age do you stop doing colonoscopies?
So the age is, according to the U.S. Administrative Task Force, is usually 75. However, I often tell individuals that if you're anticipate, living for the next 5 to 10 years, and you're up and about and have the energy to do the bowel prep, then you should do it. I've had individuals in their 80s and 90s who've developed cancer that you could have prevented with a simple colonoscopy. So I usually say, if you anticipate living far out, then there isn't a stop.
I have like a little gray area between 75 to 80, and when a patient comes in, I've had like 79-year-olds, right, and they're like, I want to get another colonoscopy, and if you're generally healthy, and your life expectancy could be another 5 to 10 years, then I agree. And it's better to do it at that point than a few years down the line when you have some symptoms and now you have more medical, history, medical issues that can make it higher risks, right? So.
Okay. Wendy, we've been talking a lot about ways we can change our diets for the better, right? And kind of creating these routines that we can stick to. Also backstage, while we were talking about foods, some of us are parents up here, and how it can be a struggle, right, to get our kids to want to eat healthy things too, and not just hot dogs or chicken nuggets. Can we talk a little bit about that, like just how you manage the routines when you're deciding diets for more than just yourself, and what does moderation look like versus what is the gold standard of trying to find balance in some of that?
regarding kids, our research shows us that it could take 10 to 11 introductions of a food to a child before they will receive it. So my first point of advice for parents is don't give up. Don't give up. It can take 10 to 11 introductions or requests for a child to receive a new food. The other thing is get kids involved in the kitchen as soon as you can. I teach kids how to cook with these great plastic knives. No one's going to draw any blood. Everybody's safe. They're great. And more evidence shows that children have a better reception to food that they had a hand in preparing. So giving kids small jobs to do in the kitchen as much as you can will get them involved and interested in cooking. I have a large client population that are in they're millennials, and they don't know how to cook, and they come to me because they're interested in learning more about nutrition, and they're interested in learning more about basic cooking, because they are spending a lot of money on restaurants, Uber Eats and DoorDash. They'd like to do other things with their money, and they have a hunch that if they're going to have healthier, longer lives, they need to get back into the kitchen, or they want to get back into the kitchen.
Okay. This one's for you, Shelton. How did your life change after your diagnosis?
I thought I ate fairly healthy prior to the diagnosis, but I'm a pretty healthy eater. She was talking about eating half meals when you go out to restaurants, and that's I'm not a big eater, so like everybody, when I'm eating at work, they always tell me that I'm having baby bites because my food is like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and most of the time I don't finish it. So I'm pretty routine in terms of not overeating and making sure that I stay slim.
Okay. Another question for the doctors. What can you do to prevent polyps?
I think it's the same things that we've been talking about, which is really the modifiable factors is, maintaining adequate, a good weight for you, avoiding, excess alcohol, smoking, avoid smoking, and then portion your red meat and try to avoid unprocessed meats and refined grains. And of course, get your screening as when it's age appropriate for you. So.
Yeah, it's a lot about a healthy lifestyle, right? Staying active, avoiding obesity, minimizing alcohol, avoiding tobacco, and then processed meats. And I think processed meats are the one thing that I think about a lot, just because I don't know, growing up, I had a lot of processed meats in my diet. My husband tells me that I'm never allowed to eat a hot dog again because I've eaten too many in my life. But when we think about like our kids and stuff, it's moderation. I think it's hard to avoid anything completely, but I love a good deli sandwich, but it's not doing it maybe every day for lunch, maybe finding a few other alternatives, making a salad, doing something else. And you can have that boar's head sandwich here and there, but minimizing, because there's a lot of processed items in there. There's the nitrates, those things that really can increase polyp growth, and also, again, red meat. So kind of reiterating what Dr. Nguyen said. I think she has something.
Things in moderation. Patients always ask me, what can I eat? And I said, and they're given advice as to, try to avoid, I had a patient with an ileostomy, and then they were told to avoid ice cream because if you eat a lot of sugars, you have high output, you end up with dehydration and such. And I said, but you need to live too, right? You have to enjoy what you eat. So, from time to time, it's okay to eat a little bit of ice cream or, a hot dog from time to time, right? Yes, you understand the risk, but you have to enjoy life as well, so.
Okay, here's another question for our doctors. Are there PrEP options for those who get sick? And are there adjustments that should be made to PrEP for underweight individuals, maybe for colonoscopies?
So I think, I don't want to speak for every doctor, but I know when we have patients come in our office, there's a lot of different PrEP options. For example, I have patients who have had bariatric surgery and they don't have a big stomach anymore. They have a very small pouch. We take that into consideration and we'll do a little bit of a different PrEP, a lower volume PrEP, have them start things a little bit earlier so they don't get as nauseous because they can't drink as much as someone else can of the fluid. I have some patients who the idea of they don't drink any water in a day, right? They don't like to drink. It's just not something that they enjoy. So we have tablet options for some patients too. There's a lot of different options. Underweight, we don't think about as much. It's more so if you have anatomical changes or if you're just more susceptible to nausea or abdominal discomfort, or maybe you've had surgery before. So there's definitely nuances and there's definitely personalization that can be done for a patient. We've come up with about many different types of unique preps that aren't even on the market, right? We've said like, okay, let's do XYZ 2 days before and do this the day before so it can work for a patient, because the one thing patients don't want to do is do some form of bowel prep and come in and not have an adequate prep. So if you have any concerns about that, I think talking about it with your doctor and seeing if you can find something more customized to you is definitely, recommended.
Yeah, I agree. Especially if you have a history of constipation.
Yes.
And you've been taking, laxatives or pro-motility agents like Colace, Sedocalax, and you don't happen to mention that, then you get the standard bowel prep, which you take the day before. Almost guaranteed you're going to have a dirty colon, and you'll need to have the test again because you can't be adequately screened. And I don't think people appreciate that as much until it happens to them. And then if you have to do the prep again, you're like, oh. So usually we have like 2-day bowel preps, other groups say you have to be 2 days on clears the day before, 2 days before in order to clean your gut. So yeah, and then there are people who with kidney failures or chronic kidney disease that we have to give certain type of preps to in order to be able to tolerate that. So.
Okay. And this is our last question from the audience, and it's for you, Dr. Witt. What does blood in your stool say versus maybe blood that might be caused for around the same area from other issues like maybe hemorrhoids? Should you be concerned that that's cancerous?
So yes, one of the signs and symptoms that you have to look out for is like blood in your stool. But we know that 80% of individuals who have bright red blood, right, in your stool is more likely due to something going on in the anal rectal area, like hemorrhoids or fissures or and such. If you have darker colored blood, right, we oftentimes ask, what is the color of your blood? If it's black, so if you bleed in your GI tract, the higher up, the darker your blood is. So if you have black blood, then oftentimes it's bleeding from upper anatomy, like your stomach or somewhere in your small bowel. Because as the hemoglobin goes through your gut, your body absorbs all the nutrients in the blood, and so it gets darker. And when you have black blood, then more likely the bleeding is occurring up higher. If you have maroon-colored blood, then theory is that it may be starting on the right side of your colon, which is the beginning of your colon. The end of your colon is the rectum, because as it moves through the colon, the blood is being absorbed and such. And so if you have bright blood, then it's more due to something occurring near the rectum, right, the end, because you're bleeding, not enough travel time for absorption of nutrients for it to change color. So, however, the distinction, one of the arguments and what they found in individuals who are diagnosed before the age of 50 is that oftentimes their diagnosis is delayed, or oftentimes 41% of individuals who are early onset colorectal cancer is delayed because a lot of the times the cancers that develop in those that are less than 50 occur on the left side, near the rectum as well. And so you can't distinguish in those who are bleeding from their bottom. I would advise you to undergo a colonoscopy to eliminate the worst case scenario, right? Because you can never say, yes, it's just due to hemorrhoids. You have, oftentimes when I see younger individuals with no family history, I give them a month trial, right? What are the causes, to eliminate the causes of to eliminate the anal rectal causes of bleeding, like eliminate the causes of hemorrhoids, eliminate the causes of fissures or tears in your bottom due to hard stools. So we put them on fiber, water, make sure their stools are soft. They spend less than 5 minutes on the toilet, no straining. You do that for a month. And if your bleeding stops, then most likely higher chance that the cause of the bleeding may be due to hemorrhoids or fissures. But if you continue bleeding, then you've already eliminated the causes of hemorrhoids or fissures or benign anal rectal causes of bleeding, then more likely I will more strongly recommend a colonoscopy. But it's always good to be on the safe side to do the colonoscopy, which is 15 to 25 minutes of your life for like another 10 years, right? To make sure that you don't have the worst case scenario.
Yeah, and I'll add, bleeding is never normal, and I've had patients who numerous times have attributed to hemorrhoids, and it's something more. And one other thing, other than hemorrhoids and fissures and things, is sometimes people can have inflammation in the colon. They can have inflammatory conditions that could be causing it as well, and I've many a times on a screening colonoscopy found inflammation and autoimmune conditions and things like that. So, earlier diagnosis of whatever it might be is definitely going to help you, in a health perspective. So talk to your doctor.
Okay, and I have one last question for all our panelists here as we wrap up this conversation. I've learned a lot to take home and tell my husband about. But all important information as we navigate colon cancer and the rise we're seeing in our community and across the country. So I want all of you to take a moment to think about this, and we'll go down the line here. But what is your hope for your one main takeaway that our audience learned tonight and that they can take home with them to their families?
I guess I'll go first. I think the biggest thing is screening can make such a difference, right? Screening can actually prevent you from developing colon cancer. So, when you hit that age of 45, or if you have a family history, earlier, get the screening and don't be scared of it. If you have concerns, talk to your doctor about what those concerns are and find a way to get the screening done.
For me, it would be proactive, get it done sooner than later. My grandmother told me a long time ago, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
When it comes to changes in your diet, get rid of this concept of all or nothing thinking. It is all on, it is perfect, or it is all off and train wreck. I think we live at the extremes of nutrition. I see that with a lot of my patients. So the takeaway is small changes, and add just one serving of fiber to your diet tomorrow. Just one serving of fiber, all of you, to your diet tomorrow.
I have two things. One is to think about and one is to do. We talked a lot about disparity, and communities experiencing disparity. It does not reflect the deficit with the community. It is a reflection of the way that community is able to access and be resourced by the system that exists to serve it. And vexing systemic issues require systemic solutions. And as it relates to do, before I was the president of the foundation, I was the deputy mayor of St. Pete, and we started a program called Healthy St. Pete. And the whole point of that was to make the healthy choice the easy choice. So we put fruits and vegetables in corner stores and made sure there were exercise stations in every neighborhood across the city. And those are same things, the concept is something we can all model in our own lives, whether we're dealing with our children, we're dealing with our friends, we're preparing for work. Make the healthy choice the easy choice. Park near the stairs in the garage. Pre-cut the vegetables and put them closest to your reach in the fridge. Little things that can make a big difference.
I guess for me, it's like just try to live your best life. All of you made a choice to come here today, to learn more about how to look for the signs and symptoms of colorectal cancer, to do the things in your life that will make you, be able to enjoy the, life that you have, right? YOLO, you only live once. And so I hope you can gather all the information from here and, take it home and apply it to yourself as well as to your family. Because when you think about it, it's kind of generational. I keep thinking about us talking about diets and everything. Like, what's your favorite food? Oftentimes, for me and those that I know, is those that have been cooked or made by our families that we grew up on, right? And so if we're raising our children on highly processed foods, that's what they're going to confer to their children. And it's very difficult to change culture and traditions. And hopefully, you can take the information that we have here and apply it to your lives and to your children's lives as well. All right.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you for being here tonight. Please join me in applauding our wonderful panel. Thank you. And if you're interested in more events like these, the Tampa Bay Times hosts several community conversations throughout the year. You can visit our website. It's tampabay.com/spotlight, where you'll find all the information there, and you'll also find the recording to today's event there in the coming days. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night.